gentlemen, we are very happy to welcome today evening Mr. Surendra Patawari, Chairman and Founder, Gemini Group from Antwerp, Belgium. A very good evening to you, sir, and we thank you for your time today with us.
Good evening, Nidhi. Nice to have you around with us. Thank you.
Is it extremely heartening to know that you have been included in the representation of Global Plastic Action Partnership, the recycling arm of the World Economic Forum, and you also represent as the Board of Directors in the Alliance to End Plastics Waste Consortium. Mr. Amitabh Kant, our Niti Aayog CEO, recently addressed you as the king of worldwide recycling. After being interviewed by Fortune magazine, Mr. Surendra, now it's your turn to be with us at Insights with Nidhi. A very warm welcome again.
It's my pleasure.
Sir, you are a chartered accountant by profession, basically a numbers man. Please share with us what was the motivation and driving force to draw you into this journey into waste management, and why did you choose Antwerp as your base?
Well, I was raised in a village where the water was scarce, electricity erratic, and resources very limited. And I landed up in Belgium, where the water is plenty, electricity is so plentiful that they have tube lights along the highways and resources much more than they need. And the journey from my village in Rajasthan to Belgium has been extremely interesting, challenging, and fulfilling. Why did I go in this business? I came to Europe for a practical training. And every time I would buy a pen, writing pen, they would give me a pen packed with all different kind of packaging materials. Back in my village, when I bought a pen, writing pen, the shopkeeper would just give me a pen. And I used to wonder, what's going to happen? All the plastic packaging around it. And I'm talking about 3-4 decades before, as the income of Europeans would grow, there's going to be more and more packaging. How they're going to handle it? And I felt, is there something I can add value? And then I felt somebody has to do it. Why not me? And that's how I started. Why Antwerp? Well, primarily for 2 reasons. First, I wanted a central location. Antwerp is right in the center from different point of view for distribution. I knew there's going to be sooner a worldwide business on recycling. The whole world would be a small village. So Antwerp was the next best choice. And the second very important choice, one of the reasons for the choice, the presence of influential Indian community here in Belgium. They have been in the diamond business for almost 5-6 generations. They've been doing extremely well, and I felt my children would have a good sanskar, good upbringing, because these diamond people have a continuous connections with India, unlike the other part of the world. And I feel if I have to make a choice again, neither would I change my profession, nor would I change the location. I must admit, when I started the business, I didn't know the word sustainability and circular economy, which they are talking about it. I just happened to start when there was practically not many people around. And I was lucky to be first timer here. Even in Europe, there was no classification of waste. People didn't know what to call waste, different color, different quality. I remember there was some kind of waste which which used to get money along with the waste, which nowadays has a lot of positive value. And the best part was the law was being framed by the European Commission. And the most interesting thing, they used Gemini as an experiment center. That is this law practical from the business point of view? Every 2 months, they would come to my office and we would sit together. And this perception helped our business tremendously. And we always believe, and here the chartered accountancy education helped me, how to exceed the legal compliance. Not only you have to comply, but how to exceed the legal compliance. So the European community, European Commission, they felt that Gemini follows the regulations, and this perception has helped us in our beautiful journey all along.
Such a beautiful journey. I think the risk-taking capacity, along with the heart in the right place, and with the basics of good business, with the sanskars going along, has made that experimental Gilead, you would say, into the biggest business in the world. Very many congratulations, and so beautiful to hear your journey, sir. With this pandemic, there is likely to be a lot of plastic waste generated from masks, shields, gloves, PPE kits, etc. How do you think this type of waste can be recycled or treated best?
You are absolutely right. This is going to be a big challenge. I did some maths calculation. Of course, these figures are very preliminary. I think I asked my people to do a lot of hard work and inputs. We came to know that the world would be generating 500,000 tons of plastic, extra plastic waste because of these masks, gloves, maybe more than 500,000 tons. I'm talking about 500,000 tons. I got the figure from Thailand and from Singapore. There, this plastic generation has gone up in the month of April by 62%. We hear the figure from World Health Organization from China. They are producing 20 million masks per day. They're talking about production of 10 billion masks per year. I think during the corona, single-use plastic consumption has gone up tremendously. The World Health Organization believed that every month we are using about 89 million units of masks, 76 million units of gloves. But I believe that figure is not correct. Germany alone is talking about a figure of 12 billion units. I think we need to revise that figure, but one thing is clear. This COVID has proved that the plastics have saved lives of thousands of the people. But along with has come this challenge how to collect, how to recycle, and how to dispose this mask. I think the world, including the developed and developed world, developing world, are not at all prepared to handle this volume. They are not at all prepared. So it's a big challenge. And I'm going to talk about this issue in our board meeting on 23rd June at the Alliance, which you referred to. And the Alliance was formed only last year. And in the Alliance, we have a budget of investment of $1.5 billion over next 5 years. And as you know, in the Alliance, all the CEOs, their 47 members are there. They invited my company because of the experience, expertise. They wanted somebody who spoils the hand, not only sitting in the air-conditioned office. And I'm happy to be part of that organization. During the meeting, we would be talking about this big issue. As far as I could judge at the moment, we don't have an option of recycling. It has to be treated. It has to be landfill at the moment. But here is the opportunity for Indian entrepreneurs, for brave entrepreneurs, to find a solution to this problem of disposals. Holland is a pioneer at this time. They're working very hard, but still we have to work a long way to find a solution when it comes to recycling.
The numbers that you've mentioned, Mr. Surendra, are mind-warping, and I'm not sure that people really realize that that is the quantum of bio-waste that they'll have to be dealing with. And if there is not a solution possible right now to recycle, I'm sure that a lot of people would be getting into this opportunity and trying to see how they can recycle this waste. Collection is one part, but recycling is something that should provide an opportunity to come up with a business model soon, I guess.
75 countries have mandated the use of masks. 75 countries. It's going to be a huge quantity.
Absolutely. It's going to become a part of life. Every human being, as to say, would be having a mask. So disposable has to be treated equally well. Mr. Surendra, how did you manage the challenge that you faced in the logistics of the movement of material globally during this pandemic?
Well, I think as far as Europe is concerned, we didn't have much challenge because Europe made the transport and the warehousing a priority item. Our warehouse people have been working even on Saturdays because scrap cannot wait for longer time. There were a lot of challenges. You would be surprised that in March, April, May, we were We made a scenario that maybe in April we would have 50% business, 25% or zero business. But in April, we had almost 70%, and in May, we came to normalcy when it comes to Europe and US. Because you do planning 4 weeks in advance, the system has been working very well. What the problem we had was in the developing world, in Mexico, in Brazil, where the issue has been very challenging. There have been blank sailings of the containers, and the bigger challenges were there at the destinations, particularly in India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. And what was disturbing was that the CFS and the port authorities at the destination were not following the instructions and the directions of the government and authorities. The importers suffered a lot. I think that's the point. I understand the worries, the concern, the financial burden of CFS and the port authorities, how they're going to pay for their cost, daily cost. But at the same time, there has to be an adjustment between the directive of the governments, and that's where we had bigger challenges. Certain countries, despite developing country like in Vietnam, Thailand, we had absolutely no problem. And Vietnam is doing very well in handling the COVID crisis, as you might read it. So across the world, the challenges varied from country to regions to countries.
I think it is depending on the mindset of the population, that how do they follow the government regulations. It is in that your challenges would have been faced. But are they easing out now after 3 months, or they are you still facing the challenges in the some of the developing countries?
I think Brazil is still a challenge. And I think like all other developing world, there are so many unpredictables, lockdowns. You have a different interpretation of lockdowns. So the developing world, we still have a challenge. We are extremely concerned about India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. The things are still something which we have to bring them under control. So I think one should be prepared for logistical challenges in those destinations.
Understood. The collection and the sorting, that requires a huge amount of manpower intensive activity. Did that also face a lot of challenge because of the unavailability of the manpower?
I think it's going to be a big challenge as well, not only for developing world, but even for countries like UK, Germany. As it is, we have this fruit season in Europe, and they're finding it difficult to get sorters, collectors, pickers, even for their standard vegetables. So when it comes to the recycling and the waste thing, I think it's going to be challenges. I read in Financial Times that 140 million people are unemployed in India. I hope that figure is not correct. And once these migrants have gone long distances in all the countries, including in China, in Vietnam, in Brazil, it's going to be tough time to convince them to travel back long distance. But eventually, I think the economic would prevail, but it would take some time before the situation comes to normalcy. And I think particularly in developing world, this migrant labor issue is going to be very challenging.
Truly, we've seen it in India to reach to very, very high heights, and bringing them back is going to be a challenge because they did not go from here happy for sure. Mr. Surendra, how the products are performing in the global markets, since you deal with all kind of waste material like rubber, paper, metal, plastics, how has their performance varied?
Well, we give second life to about 2 million tons of plastic, metal, rubber, paper, and used cooking oil as well. Used cooking oil is used for process to making into biodiesel. Our business model is we collect, we transport through legal compliance, and we buy back the materials after processing. So we do the complete circular economy. We do not simply just trade. We like to buy back the materials. We sell scrap to Jindal, for instance. We buy back the finished goods for distribution all around the world. Our company is an example. If you see the trade lanes, which we do, it looks like a a spider wave working in 60 countries. Rubber and paper has been affected tremendously because the destinations were the developing world, and there our business has been affected tremendously. But when it comes to plastic and metal, in the beginning we had challenges, but now they are back to the levels. And particularly in plastics, we are surprised that the business, when it comes in May, June, we would probably exceed by 10%. Right, you asked a very valid question, because one of the reasons we could do reasonably well was that our people have been calling all our suppliers and buyers almost every day, asking them, is there anything we can do? Are you having any challenges? Instead of getting information afterwards, oh, we have an issue at the port, we have been doing proactive actions. And as you know, interest rate in Europe is very low, and we felt to our suppliers, instead of waiting for payment after 10 days, if we can pay them in advance, they would be a happy person. And at this time, people were worried whether they would get the payment or not. And at the moment, the collection of waste is low. So the suppliers, they made a preference to our company that they are sure of getting the payment, and we got a lot of extra quantities. Thank God about it.
I think this is the first time I'm hearing that you kind of preempted even the payment, where now people are very careful in extending any kind of credit to anyone in any field. So I think that's a welcome change, and that would have probably put the trust back in your company and created that kind of bond, which will go a very long way. Oh, beautiful act done there, and learning for a lot of our industry colleagues. Mr. Surendra, what was the impact of drop in the crude oil prices on the raw material for recycling? We know what is the impact on the virgin material, but how did it impact the raw material for recycling, the prices of that?
Well, the collection of plastic scrap got very limited. And due to lockdown, there was collection difficulty even of waste. So when the crude prices went down, it didn't have an immediate impact. On the contrary, if you see during last 1 month, the prices of scrap have gone up. So psychologically, of course, you tend to feel that the oil is down, the virgin prices would be also down. Sometimes I feel there is not much correlation between the scrap prices and the virgin prices in the short term. Of course, in the eventually, the economics would justify parity. So at this time, we didn't see much impact on the prices of plastic. On the contrary, there has been shortage of materials. We can ship, I think, 25% more if we have availability from Europe and US.
That is very few things in the world that are selling at a premium. So recycled polymers is one of them. Wow, what a hero recycled polymer has become. Mr. Surendra, in Europe, as I understand, different percentages of recycled polymers is used for by brands as mandated by the government. So in the last 3 months, because of the lesser availability of the recycled polymers, how did they manage to meet up with their commitments?
Well, when the COVID crisis started, the prices of both virgin and recycled material was very low. When you compare during the prices during the economic crisis of 2008, the prime virgin prices was almost $1,800. It came down to $600 in a few months or a few weeks. But in case of this period, the virgin prices were already very low. And the recycled producers were sitting on a huge inventory. So I think in a way, the chain system did not work very well against the supply system. I did not hear that the people did not have access to the material, particularly in Europe and US. So there were good inventories. I think the chain was not so much affected.
Wonderful. I think that's a good news again. Mr. Surendra, the virgin polymers, they have a detailed spec sheet when they sell to their customers along with the grading specified. Is there a possibility that the recycled polymer can also follow the same route of publishing the grading so that the authenticity can be more?
I think it's a challenge. if I give you the experience of our company, you have certain kind of, you have one particular kind of LDP packaging film which you get from retail mart, from Walmart. The classification is so different that even in our company, we had to classify this is India quality, this is China quality. So I think standard classification, if you're asking, still some time away. We still have that primitive system. We have been trying hard to do some basic, of course, I must say in the PET, there is a progress on this, but on the rest of other recycling, it's a challenge. Still, it's a challenge. We are working on this, but still the recycling community is still not so very well developed like the prime producers. Still, we are working towards that objective. Might take some time.
No problem. At least it's in the agenda. So that is a good news for us. Mr. Surendra, is it possible that the recyclers also publish that the polymer that they are giving can also be used for food packaging? Because there is a myth that the recyclable polymer cannot be used for food packaging. Would you kindly share a little bit of information on that for us?
Well, this is the point I refer quite frequently. There's a tremendous amount of ignorance, not only among us, the general public, public authorities. In general, practically, when it comes to plastic, they believe, oh, it's a raddi, it's a second grade, you cannot use for the food grade. Would you believe in England, under their milk scheme, all milk bottles have to have 30% recycled content, all milk bottle. And there was a voluntary agreement to raise it up to 50%. Which mother would allow her children to drink milk from a bottle if it's detrimental, if it's a hazardous? This is the point we have to bring to the people's attention. In Europe, PET recycling, 22% of PET is used for food grade application. 20%. So it's a huge quantity. And I think sooner or later we have to realize real recycling, I would call, when you can turn the product into the same product when it was originally made. Otherwise, all that we are doing, it's a down recycling. And the world is moving towards the real recycling. Very much so, you can have a food grade application, absolutely.
I think this can kind of clarify a little bit of confusion that may be in a lot of people's mind, and a little bit of explanation can go a long way. The Indian waste management rules that were released in 2016 included the solid waste management, hazardous waste management, biomedical, construction. A lot of rules were there that were included in the 2016 version. Mr. Surendra, because you're kind of in touch with the recycling world of the whole geography of the entire world, where do you see is the gap in execution in India in the waste management system?
I think the first issue which I always point out is about the ignorance. We are not aware the usefulness of plastic and the enormity of the issue of the plastic waste. Particularly in India, I always felt that plastic is being compared with evil. We are comparing with tobacco, but this COVID has proved that we cannot live without plastics. Not even for one day. You wake up in the morning, first thing you look for is your mobile. The mobile is made up with plastics. Then you take a shower, the shower pipe is made up with the plastic. You drive to the office in your car has 15-16% plastic. Then the computer, laptop, list is endless. The plastic touches the life of every person, every day, everywhere. And this is what people have to realize, that it's absolutely essential item. You cannot live without it. Now, having understood this thing, what do we do? Well, we must follow the best practices of the world. I was fortunate to have a memorandum of understanding with Honorable Minister Sadanand Gowda, that where we would share our best practices, which we learned from 60 countries where we work. And some of the things I'd like to share with you. For instance, government has to give reduce GST on recycled material, on the scrap. Similar Koreans are doing, similar to Europe is doing. Government should consider giving extra depreciation allowance when you install machinery for recycling. Like in US, the Trump administration promulgated a law that in the very first year, you can have 100% appreciation if you are employing any machinery for recycling. In Holland, they give you 38% extra benefits. These are the benefits which we have to give. Secondly, when it comes to public procurement, government procurement, they should give extra weightage for the material which is made from recycled content. But the third most important thing which I want to point out, we must have predictable, long-term, national, uniform laws. That's the most challenging things. And I'd like to share the European example. In Europe, every vehicle has to be recyclable to the extent of 85% from the year 2015. They informed about this law 10 years in advance. The law was enacted in 2005. Law was announced in 2005 for enforcement in 2015. People had 10 years time. No wonder in Belgium, a small country, 1/10 of Maharashtra or Rajasthan, they have 16 shredder plants generating 1 million tons of resource of iron waste. How many do we have in India? Maybe 1 or 2. So if we have a long-term predictable, whatever law they are, every country has to follow their own culture systems, but don't change the laws. And if we have a predictable law, I can assure you, Nidhi, there would be investment of billions of dollars in recycling in India because India commands a very good reputation. So these are the things, if we can fill in these things, I think the recycling business would grow tremendously in India. I would say exponentially they would grow in India.
I think this message is going to be taken very well by our recycling association, and by citing the best examples as you've shared, they can easily go to the government, and we should be having some good laws which should help the recycling industry, at least in the initial stages. And this message is very strong. It will ensure that it at least reaches the policy makers. And when did you have an audience with Mr. Gaura next time? We should ensure that we go with the recycling association and we show them that how the European countries and the other countries in the world have actually made this recycling business to the benefit of the industry as well as to the benefit of the citizens. That's going to be a good learning. Mr. Surendra, the circular economy in every country is treated very differently. Which country's example do you think is going to be the best fit for India?
Belgium.
Yeah.
Without any doubt, Belgium is a shining example. Belgium has done extremely well. Even in our house, when you come here, you would see we have 4 to 5 different sorting bins. And if anybody plays around with this, they trace it back and they send you a panel note. Belgium is doing extremely well. They have a very good EPR system. And to learn from Belgium, what my company did 2 years before, we invited the federal committee of the EPR association, where they have 20 national EPR associations. So there were 21 people, the heads of countries like Germany, France, Ireland, their heads, together with their president, visited India. And they visited even our village, and they were so happy that they're willing to share their expertise. They fell in love with India. So we have accessed the best practices, and I'm hoping sooner or later we are able to bring those practices to India through their experience in these 20 countries.
Wonderful. So, we are lucky that you are there.
Belgium is one of the best.
Well, it's easy. There is a good model working. It should be easy to kind of absorb it, since we are in a stage where we can implement it. Mr. Surendra, I understand that you have huge plans for India. You also already apparently have 2 recycling plants also here. Would you like to share what are you going to do with your business in India here for recycling?
Well, to be honest, I didn't know that I would be going in India the way we have been going. I always felt that India has its own challenges. Our exposure to India was about 10 to 15% only. I felt there are a lot of issues the entrepreneur handle in India. But after our initial experiment with some reclaimers, waste pickers, we felt there is an opportunity to share our experience. So we started a project to create collection infrastructure. I think the biggest challenge in whole world is the collection system. Over 2 billion people in the world do not have access to basic waste collection system. So we have to start from the grassroots level. So we started with the collection through these reclaimers, helping them with sorting, in quality, with the infrastructure, working capital, and we have been adding 4 to 6 families every month. The idea was to add every week, but due to Corona, the things got a little bit a break, stop. But we have been adding at the moment between 4 to 6 families every week. And our idea is to build up a network of 400 families in next 3 years. The project is going to change the lives of almost 1,000 families. And their income has grown up, the business has become self-sufficient, and they are being brought into the network of organized sector. Child labor has been eradicated. This project is a fine example of partnership between plastic, people and planet, and eventually profit. We are happy at the progress.
Wonderful. I think we are lucky that we have an India fellow being who is the king of recycling world over. And Indian recycling industry is at a stage that we can learn and quickly absorb from the experiences and the advice that you have to give, extend it to the policymakers, and give an impetus to the recycling industry in India to get into exponential growth, as you rightly said. And my last question would be, Mr. Surendra, that your children, how have you seen them take up this waste management and recycling? And do they also have that fire and passion that you have had in your earlier age?
I think they have equal amount of fire, if not more, because when they see that this business changing lives of thousands of the people, particularly when you have children who are born, brought up in the Western world, they see the world from a different aspect. Particularly my daughter, she is a graduate from Boston Berklee College of Music. She has studied music all the way. And what she thought of that, how can I promote plastic recycling through music? So she has been holding events in big conferences like Eastery and other places where she has been promoting music. And would you believe, in her first presentation, she got an assurance of $500,000 from some companies right on the spot. And what she does it, if I am allowed to say, she goes to the music concert and she tells to the organizer that I would take care of the trash after the event. In exchange, would you please ask the artist to say a few words about recycling? Can you imagine Shah Rukh Khan saying to the whole audience, guys, take care of the trash? It would have a big impact on the Beyonce saying to her crowd, guys, take care of the trash before you go home. And that's what she has been doing. She's doing a great work. My son is in rubber recycling business. And can you believe he's taking care of 1 out of 7 tire in the whole world. We recycle 50 million tires every year. And the credit goes to him. He's based in London. When he started, the rubber business was in the beginning. Now we are doing almost 50 million tire recycling. And I feel very happy that what they learned across our dinner table, they are putting it in the practice.
That's so nice to hear that even the next generation, such well-educated youngsters, are also taking up to recycling and making the environment a much better place to live in. I think this fire can be spread across in the next generation, and this world surely will become a more beautiful world to live in. We are going to thank you at this note so much for sharing your thoughts and your experience. And I'm sure that not only our Indian industry, but the entire industry worldwide is going to benefit from this session a lot. Thank you so much, Mr. Surendraji, for your time. And we are going to see you soon at our Flexible Packaging Summit whenever that happens. And stay safe.
Thank you for sharing me my thoughts and experience. Thank you so much. It was pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Don't miss any video from Insights with Nidhi. Subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon at the bottom of the video.